Howdy, partners.
Howdy. Hey.
Howdy. Welcome to NG Plus News, Games, and More, where we bring you news, games, and more. What a concept. I am Sydney Goodman, and I'm here with Matt Kim, Josh Dew, and Tom Marks. Hello, everyone.
What's up?
Hey.
Hello.
Let's just dive into it. I recently moved my camera, and it's weird because I feel like it's like I have to look so far up to have normal sightline, but I digress. Okay, let's just kick it off with some spicy news. Gabe Newell thinks Xbox Series X is better than PS5. Those are fighting words, at least for the internet. So speaking to the Project NZ, Newell, who is he's the
founder of Valve.
Co-founder of Valve?
Yeah. Founder and head.
Founder and head. Okay, I wasn't sure if he was co-founder.
Yeah.
The big cheese over at Valve. So, he has some weight. He knows what he's talking about. Was asked by the Project NZ which of the two next-gen consoles was better. And he said quite bluntly, the Xbox. When asked why, he said, because it is. That definitely sounds like the answer of somebody who is the head of a big company and can say whatever he wants. But he did continue, I don't have a stake in that race. Quote, obviously we, Valve, do most of our development on personal computers, but of the two, I would definitely go with an Xbox. Anybody want to take a stab as to either disagree, agree? Where do you think he's coming from? Matt? Oh, and by Matt, I mean Tom.
No, Matt, you're welcome to if you wanna.
You know what? Okay, I'll throw out my 2 cents on this. I think it makes a lot. Like, one of Gabe Newell's whole philosophies and his philosophy of Valve is like the openness of the PC platform, and it would make sense that he would side with what I think early on or at this moment in the console sort of watch is that the Xbox is definitely more open than the PS5 in terms of what it can play, the games that are allowed on the system, the Game Pass service, which has been a great way to open up new avenues of connecting players and new games that they've never tried. I think it makes a lot of sense that he would be a fan of what the Xbox Series X is doing as opposed to the PS5. But I would defer to Tom.
Well, so one of the things that, like, for the context of this, the Project NZ is a television show in New Zealand, which is the country that Gabe Newell has essentially been a refugee in during the pandemic for the last few months. And that's the sort of like inflated way of saying it. Basically, he's been stuck in New Zealand and he like is throwing them a concert to say thank you to the country. And I guess as part of this is like doing interviews with like local news folk, which is great. But like, the thing you got to remember about Valve is because they're so quiet and have been so quiet for so long, everyone thinks that they're like very, very closed off and cryptic. But the truth of the matter is Valve as a company is like really, really candid and really, really open. They just don't talk a lot, right? And that's starting to change in recent years. But like, so literally what this is, I think, is somebody said, so which of these consoles is better? And Valve and Gabe Newell was just like, oh, it's the Xbox because, it is. Because like if you look at on paper, the spec lists of these systems, the Xbox is better. Like it's just fundamentally is a stronger system. Mm-hmm. And I think and this is now speculation, I think he's thinking of it from probably the hardware standpoint more than anything. Because Valve is a PC developer fundamentally. Like they do make stuff for consoles, but really they're focused on PCs. And if they were looking at these systems about, okay, which one can we get the most out of, they would probably gravitate towards the one that is more PC-like, right? More open, like Matt said, but more PC-like also. And Microsoft is doing that more than Sony. So it's like, I think this is a much more exciting answer to the world than it was to Gabe Newell the moment he said it. Right?
For sure, yeah.
Like, I don't think he was trying to make headlines with this or anything.
Yeah, Josh, I saw you nodding your head quite a bit. How you feeling?
Yeah, it's like none of this really surprises me at all. Like
because you're a sidekick, and you knew this would happen.
Yes. Also, I just texted Gabe about that. We're talking about this right now. He's like, chill.
Of course.
But it's, they're making games, and it's like when you make games, mostly what you care about is hardware. So, I mean, if you just looked at the PS5 and the Xbox side by side, just purely specs, like if you took off PS5 took off Xbox and you just looked at specs, you'd probably just look at the one that had bigger numbers, right?
Totally, yeah.
It's just logical, makes sense. And I also don't think Gabe like really cares that much that he says that. Like he doesn't.
He's
doesn't
ascended above the internet chatter.
He's not.
Well,
He's not.
like. Also, it's on like you're saying it on like local New Zealand news, right? Like no shade to New Zealand. I love New Zealand.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to throw shade at this program either, but like it's not like he was on like a global stage saying this. He was on like a very kind of like smaller thing, and like people found it, right?
Yep.
And
like IGN's Unfiltered or something, you know?
If even I think it's a morning show. Lucy O'Brien, who we work with, said that it's like a morning talk show that like her parents watch, which is
right.
I love that.
No shade to them like whatsoever, right? No shade to that
so
program.
Gabe was just on the like just the New Zealand morning show.
Yeah, he's been stuck there for 3 months with his family.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just like he's on that show talking about games, and they're like they couldn't, ask him really deep cut stuff, and they're just like, what do you like better, the PS5 or the Xbox Series X?
Well, right? I like thinking about like they're like, okay, so we have this guy, he's like the head honcho over at Valve. They make video games. Like let's just look up like what's going on in video games. Like,
right,
gosh, there's these 2 consoles coming out. We should ask which one he likes better. And they probably have no idea that there's this huge thing on the internet of people whose job revolves around being excited about this.
Like games media. Yeah. They're probably like they have like 5 interview questions. It's like, what's your favorite video game of all time?
What did you think about Mario 64?
Right.
I feel like y'all guys are disparaging the Project NZ here. Come on now.
No, and I do not mean that at all, but I digress. So we have some comments though that actually brought up a different point in terms of this Xbox Series X, PS5, which one's better. I'll read both of them and then we can kind of talk about it because they're about going down the same path. So Paul Mall said, if the choice of launch titles boils down to Halo Infinite versus Ratchet and Clank, I don't know if I can say bad words here. No, beep, Xbox has the edge. Game Pass just sweetens the deal. And then I Need Games says it's hard to justify buying either console at launch with only 2 games for each for them. And especially since their first year is going to be weak. Even the Xbox and PS4 launched with more games. So yeah, I don't know. Do either any of you have anything to say about this relatively thin launch titles that we've got for these 2 guys?
Can I just say to start, Gabe Newell doesn't care about Game Pass.
No. I don't even think Gabe Newell cares about launch games, to be honest with you. But
I don't think he was thinking about Halo Infinite versus Ratchet and Clank at all when he answered that question, right? Like that's not his concern here. But I will say that Game Pass, man, does it sweeten the deal for the average player picking between these, because you buy this system and you just have everything you'd ever want. And if you didn't own an Xbox One, you suddenly have all of these options that you didn't have before. So like, I totally agree with that I think that Microsoft has put together a really, really enticing, at least at launch, sort of like, here's a service that just gets you so much out the gate.
Also, isn't Miles Morales a launch title for PS5?
I believe it is. I think that's
right.
Yes, I think that might be the 2 is Ratchet and Clank and Miles Morales.
If it's not a launch title, it was announced for fall.
I believe it's holiday. Yeah,
holiday
2020.
2020.
Launch window
coming out this year in 2020.
But that's all.
Well, I mean,
we don't have a date right for the system, so like we're just like, well,
I like playing this game. Rapid fire. I'll start with you, Matt. When do you think the systems are coming out?
November?
That's not a date.
November 2nd.
November 2nd for Matt. Josh, thoughts?
November 21st. When's Thanksgiving?
I don't know, but you just said November 21st. While you look that up, Tom, do you have an educated guess?
November 12th.
Is that the second
Cyberpunk?
Okay. I keep saying the second Friday in November. I don't know
that's
the date.
The 13th.
The
The
13th.
second Friday. No, that's a four. Oh yeah. No, yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Is it?
Right.
No? Yeah? Yeah, no.
Yeah, you're right. November 13th is the second Friday.
All right.
Well, because then Black Friday comes, and then they're going to put the PS4 and Xbox One on all these sweet deals. So it's got to be before then.
Those sweet, sweet deals. Okay, well, does anybody else have any piece that they want to say on Gabe Newell being in New Zealand? Maybe Xbox versus PlayStation? If not, we're going to move on.
I think if I had Gabe Newell money, I would have done the same thing.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
That is, you know what? That is an aspiration. It's just,
Right.
let's just go on. I also, okay, this is the last thing I'm going to say because I could go so far off topic with imagining him and his family just being in New Zealand. But the fact that it's like they're in New Zealand, you know, they're happy to be there, but then their way of giving back to New Zealand is by going on their talk shows. To me, is just like kind of funny that like you're that important that that's
It's
like how
a
you give
concert.
back.
It's a concert, right?
I feel like New Zealanders didn't realize who he was until like the news stories of him being in New Zealand started coming up. You know, where
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
when he was just there, just relaxing,
He's
and
like a
suddenly,
dude.
and like news goes out that oh shit, Gabe Newell's in New Zealand, and suddenly all the talk shows are like, who's he? Do we need him on? We should probably get him on. He's throwing a big concert with his like billionaire money. We should talk to him.
Maybe they'll rename New Zealand Newell Zealand.
Pretty good.
And on that note, Emmy nominations 2020 were announced. Watchmen leads the pack with 26 nominations. The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel follows on 20. Ozark and Succession have 18 apiece. And The Mandalorian, Saturday Night Live, and Schitt's Creek have 15. Netflix is the biggest winner for a TV platform with 160 nominations, with HBO following with 107. We were talking about this earlier. So we were talking about Netflix. And obviously, The Irishman, they had Marriage Story nominated for the Oscars. But here it is denoted as a TV platform. And we were just talking about, what was it? The Breaking Bad movie, El Camino. Is nominated for Best TV Movie. So let's start, Josh. Why do you think that Netflix, that's confusing, a Netflix movie is both nominated for Oscar, but then some for a TV movie? I'm confused.
Yeah, I guess the thing that separates El Camino from Marriage Story or The Irishman is that it's a Breaking Bad movie. It's a movie from a TV show. And even though it did premiere in theaters and on Netflix, it could be that association that, you know, keeps them into the Emmys category, or Netflix had a choice in this matter, and we're like, you can submit it as a TV movie for the Emmys or a movie for the Oscars, and maybe they thought they had a better shot for the Emmys.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it should win?
I
TV
don't
movie,
think I've
American
watched any of
Son,
these
Bad
other ones.
Education.
Yeah, I haven't seen
Heartstring,
any
yeah.
of these other movies. So
I
by
have not.
default,
I cannot chime
yes.
in.
I did like El Camino though. I thought it was better than some of my friends who didn't like it so much, but I thought it accomplished its mission quite well.
Right on. Matt Kim, how are you
Yes.
feeling about these nominations? Do any stand out to you as clear-cut favorites, or do you think anything maybe got snuffed, as they say?
No, I'm actually not a huge fan of the Emmys. I think they nominate the same shows over and over again for a couple years, but there was a big standout winner for me personally, and I think Josh would agree, with HBO's Succession, which got a ton of nominations across the board for
Why
being
do
one of
you
the best
have
shows on
that?
Now to
HBO.
the OG. To be the OG, and he playing.
So good.
I had my boy Squiggle cook this up.
So,
I can't believe. Wait, did you plan this? Did
Wait.
anybody else know that this is what he was wearing?
Yeah, this all
Oh, yeah.
happened before you got in here.
what I get
yeah,
for being late.
for the people in chat, if you haven't seen Succession, it's basically a show about a Murdoch-esque media empire ruling family, and the patriarch of this family, who owns this, Fox network like TV media conglomerate, has to pass on his company maybe if he wants to, and he's got 3 children all vying for the top job, and
A fourth child that isn't.
a fourth child's risen, but he wants to be president. So
I forgot about him.
there are 4 children total. 3 of them want the CEO job. One of them just wants to be, president of the United
President.
States. So, yeah, whatever. It's just not a big deal. But it's a great show. 2 seasons. A third was supposed to be on the way, but due to the pandemic was delayed, which is sad news. But yeah, it swept a lot of the acting noms. I think best supporting actor in drama is basically all Succession actors plus 1.
Is it? Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah.
They're good. They got a good crew.
It's got nominations in guest actors and directing and writing. Basically, I think after sort of this is Succession secretly HBO's best show? Like, this is a year that people are like, oh, Succession is probably HBO's best show.
Yeah, Tom, I'll get to you and your opinions on this in a second, but first I have a quick sad story about me watching Succession.
Uh-oh.
So last year I got the Succession bug when it was Gamescom, and so I downloaded all of season 1, all of season 2, or so I thought, to watch on the plane going to Germany and back. And I thought I finished it, and I came home and was talking to my neighbor and was like, yeah, Succession, amazing, it's so good, but like the way season 2 ended, like I don't really get it because I saw this hype on Twitter and like it just kind of ended. And then he tells me how season 2 actually ended. Come to find out, I did not download all of the episodes of season 2, and I stopped watching at like episode 8, and I'm pretty sure there's 10 of them. And so I got the ending somehow spoiled for me by being a dingus. But it's still a great show, and you should fantastically watch it. But Tom, anything stick out to you? Maybe in comedy, limited series? I don't know. Do you think anything got snubbed?
Well, I mean, I think we're snubbing right now because you guys are so excited about Succession, but also Watchmen came away with the most noms, right?
True.
Touche. That's HBO.
That is true. Did you guys all watch Watchmen?
I did.
I haven't yet.
Ooh,
I
very
really
good.
enjoyed it. And Watchmen, like, I'm really glad this show is getting the recognition it has. Especially like they've got 3 of the supporting actor in a limited series or movie noms of the 6, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm glad this show is getting acknowledged because I think it does a lot of things really, really well in a lot of different ways. Like visually, I think the show is really stunning. The story it told was really great. The acting was really good. I think they hit a lot of notes. And so it's super cool to see them be acknowledged on so many different levels as well. It's also so funny to me because I watched Watchmen and Succession within like the last month, right? I binged both of those shows within the last month from the beginning, and like they're so different, right? In tone, in theme, in everything. Like Succession is all a show about like watching just terrible people be rich and terrible, and then this show is all about like watching conflicted people just trying to be good and do right, and like it's such different tones. It's really cool to see both of those sort of like have their moments in very, very, very different ways.
They're both being recognized for it, and so they have
HBO wins either way.
HBO. Well, and they were winning with Game of Thrones all of those years. The first
Why are they even in the Emmys? They're not TV.
They're
HBO.
They're better than TV.
Sid, as you said, they were winning with Game of Thrones right up until they weren't.
I mean, they have such a lock on so many categories. It's
totally.
Who watches The Watchmen? Turns out Emmy voters, but not Sydney.
But not yet. Okay, so I have a reason. I have well, not really, because we've been in a pandemic and I should have finished reading the comics by now. But I have the comics and I wanted to finish reading it before I watched the show. Yeah. And then I got distracted and Summer of Games and Comic-Con happened, and now I still have not finished it in any capacity. So I might have to just bite the bullet and watch it. But moving right along.
You can watch the movie.
I have watched the movie, yeah. So I'm not like totally lost on it. I was just trying to be like really romantic about it. And I was like, oh, I'm going to watch the movie and then I'm going to read it and it's going to be really great and I'm going to get so much out of the show.
Yeah, I watched the movie but only read about half the comic, and I watched the show, and like as long as you know and I'll avoid spoilers here, but as long as you know the one extraordinarily crucial difference between the comic and the movie, like you'll be fine pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there we go.
But that one single difference is very.
You should know that for anybody watching who's
Very
like, I don't know what it is, and you want to watch the show.
Yeah.
Maybe look it up. Watch a YouTube video. I'm sure IGN has one on it. That sounded like a knock on us, but it's not. It's because we have really good coverage, and I'm sure that we thought of that and made a video about it. But moving right along, so Nintendo's relationship with the competitive Smash community has gotten trickier after the sexual misconduct scandal that came up earlier this month. So the fighting game community in general had allegations of sexual misconduct across all levels, from top level pros, commentators, and organizers. And the allegations largely centered on the Super Smash Bros. Fighting game community. And where it becomes why the news is coming back up again is because Nintendo issued a statement supporting the victims. Here is the statement, quote, "At Nintendo, we are deeply disturbed by the allegations raised against certain members of the competitive gaming community." Nintendo said in a statement when asked by IGN, quote, "They are absolutely impermissible. We want to make it clear that we condemn all acts of violence, harassment, and exploitation against anyone, and that we stand with the victims." So again, why this is kind of newsy and a big deal is because unlike Riot or Blizzard, who work directly to manage the competitive scene and the esports scene around their games, Nintendo actually has distanced itself pretty intentionally from working with the community. And so the Smash community is very much a grassroots scene. I know, Matt, you wrote this story up. Do you want to kind of take us through the depths of what implications this could have on Smash going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. You did a really good job summarizing it, but the main point is that unlike Blizzard and Activision that like creates the sort of professional leagues around their games, Nintendo does a very hands-off approach. You know, they'll host Smash Brothers Ultimate showcase at E3 or stuff like that, but a lot of the tournaments that you actually see at, you know, past Evos or DreamHack are all organized by third-party, unaffiliated, just community members who just love the game and want to build their own Smash scene around it. But the problem is that because there's no official, you know, oversight by this major company over their game, it sort of leaves room for harassment to slip in, you know, and it's a tough situation, especially because the community really wants Nintendo to take a part in their activities. Like one of the things about grassroots Smash that a lot of other esports don't have is like they don't have good prize money, they don't have good facilities, they don't have good net code, because Nintendo doesn't do any of that for this scene. And so they've been begging Nintendo to please, you know, pay attention to us, please, you know, help us out. Like, we love your games, we built all this around you. It'd be great if we can do something official. But now, because of these allegations, they're worried that all chances of any potential partnership between grassroots Smash community and Nintendo proper might be lost forever, because Nintendo distances itself from the community specifically for situations like this, you know, because they can't manage everything, because they don't have 100% oversight on everything. They would rather disassociate the brand from potential liabilities, including, you know, this misconduct scandal that has really overtaken the community in the past month. So we spoke with a bunch of community members who are really worried that, you know, Nintendo doesn't talk about competitive Smash very often, and so this statement is one of the rare times that they officially acknowledge the community, and it is to chastise the community, right? Is to frown upon them. And so there's any sort of future path in which the esports community around Smash could finally get the support from Nintendo that they wanted might be gone forever because of the scandal.
Well, and to add fuel to that potential fear, in the write-up that you did, actually, Matt, it was very nicely done. Thank you for that. In 2013, Evo held a donation drive to determine which video game would take the 8th slot for the show's roster. Evo is probably the biggest, I think, arguably the biggest fighting game tournament for the year. And the community that donated the most money would earn a place for their game to be in Evo 2013, and Smash Bros. Melee won. And even though the campaign was good-natured, Nintendo attempted to first shut down Smash from appearing in Evo, and then went to try to block the live streams of the game from the event. And so there is, while Nintendo has distanced itself, they have also actively kind of tried to stop it. So I am sure I've kind of been a little bit further out from the FGC in most recent years. So I'm not sure what that support has looked like or hasn't looked like. Matt, I don't know, Matt, Tom, Josh, if any of you know if they have, with Ultimate coming out, have they done anything to...
They did more initially, right? Like they not like the larger support, right? Otherwise we wouldn't really be having this conversation as much. But like when Smash was first sort of coming out and getting bigger, they did tournaments around E3, right? Like they tried to bring back the Nintendo World Cup at E3 to do these like larger game tournaments. You know, obviously they've been reaching a little bit more into competitive sort of things with games like Splatoon, which had a really like a popular, not like huge, but popular competitive scene. So like it has felt like in recent years, Nintendo is at least had been coming around the bend of like at all admitting that competitive gaming exists, right? Like that was really the stage they were at, even was like just acknowledging that, yeah, some people take these games really seriously and want to compete on high levels with them. And that doesn't mean that they were, you know, sponsoring Evo and doing all these big things or anything like that. But yeah, it was coming around a little bit. And this is such a disappointment to hear that, like, and obviously there's very serious parts of this story that are not just like, oh, there's going to be less competitive games, but like, it's disappointing to hear the community members be like, man, like, we don't know where this leaves us anymore, when like it seemed like progress was at least inching, maybe. It's just such a disappointment.
Yeah, I was actually, Casey and I went to Japan for like a Nintendo Live event where they had a Smash tournament and they invited Smash pros to come in and play. And, you know, they had like Japanese people who attended the event, they could try out to join the tournament as well. They had like a team that was just like the normies who showed up to the event to compete against these pro players. Yeah, it was really cool. And it was the first time I'd seen like a competitive Smash event live. And it was one thrown by Nintendo. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but it was still like pretty fun and engaging. I could see them though, like I could understand why they're going to distance themselves a little more. Maybe they'll lean into more of just kind of these grassroots types of tournaments, because I mean, one of the pro players that was invited to the tournament is one of these people that is caught in the scandal. So I could like, you know, totally see them going like, ooh, like we had that guy on and whatever.
And it's worth mentioning too, just like in 2013 when they did that thing where they were like trying to stop Evo from even having Melee, like that was a very different Nintendo than we have nowadays, right? In 2013, I believe was the year that they also like sent cease and desists and pulled all of the monetization of like every Let's Play of every Nintendo game under the sun. And everyone was like, what are you doing? Like, we can't make any money off of your games anymore. And then they sort of walked that back a little bit, and a few years later they did like a Nintendo Creator Program, and then a few years, I think in 2018, they even dropped that and they opened up their content sharing guidelines even more. So like they were, even back in 2013, like they were a much more reserved in terms of people using their games for anything other than playing them than they are nowadays. So yeah,
that's a really good point. I totally forgot the dark days of the Nintendo monetization.
Yeah, it was awful for a little while. Like Nintendo was basically putting YouTubers out of business for a little bit, and they aren't doing that anymore. But they also aren't, you know, like giving them money to run tournaments either.
Totally. Now, Matt, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you feel like the de facto FGC folk as of right now. But we have a comment from Blue Living, who says, you know, you really didn't think you could think less of the Smash competitive community. My camera just went out, but I'm going to keep talking. And then they really go ahead and exceed all your expectations. Now, can you talk a little bit about, like, what is he or she referring to when they say, like, have a bad rep?
Well, I mean, it's a little generalization to say that it's, you know, a little generalization a little inter-community rivalry and hate on the Smash community in particular. I think there is a known toxicity problem within the FGC at large. I think it's unfair to just say it's the Smash community specifically. But I don't think it's unfair to say that there are some problems within the community in fighting games in general that need to be fixed and rooted out if they need mainstream attention and larger support from companies. So while I wouldn't say that it's specifically the Smash community, I do think that in this year, like the FGC has had 2 scandals in consecutive years. There was a scandal in 2019, there was a scandal in 2020, and that's not a good look for the community if they want to compete with some of these other endemic esports organizations like League of Legends or Dota 2.
Yeah.
The Smash community, like I think you said before, like they started off like really disorganized and they had to do everything themselves. And I think that kind of initial disorganization kind of leads to this lack of integrity amongst, within the community, I guess, without an oversight, without somebody to actually pay for things and make rules, it's hard to keep things in check.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's tough because you look at, and this is the last thing we'll say before we move on, unless anybody else has any comments. But you look at, there are these organizations that do have oversight, and there is still harassment, and there are these things that are going through the cracks. And so it's kind of just like, well, imagine if there was absolutely no oversight, and it's kind of this like wild, wild west situation, how easily something like, not something, but some things like all of these allegations could seep into the community. But again, moving right along, Cuphead is out for PS4. So it was a surprise release on PS4, and developer studio MDHR, which I think they have done a superb job in giving support to this title and giving just their fans more and more. But they also announced a free update coming to the existing Xbox One version. The upcoming Xbox update will add a digital art gallery, behind-the-scenes commentary features, and playable soundtrack to the game, which Cuphead has an incredible soundtrack. I write to it occasionally. But there has been no date for the update's release quite yet. A DLC expansion, The Delicious Last Course, is still due to release this year after a delay, and MDHR says we'll learn more in the coming months, but no release date again was given. Any Cuphead fans or any PlayStation fans who hasn't played Cuphead yet, and now you can?
I think I'm in that second camp for sure.
Yeah?
I've always been like intrigued by Cuphead. I guess I could have been playing it on Switch this whole time too.
We're not talking about that. We're talking about this.
PlayStation. Now it's on 2 of the consoles that I have. Then it's
now
like,
you have no excuse.
Okay. Yeah, now I really have no excuse.
Yeah. Y'all see the stop motion trailer that they released today to announce the PS4 news? It was good and creepy. And
yes. I think we
they
just
definitely they know that, the good and creepy.
Mm-hmm.
Tom, how did you like Cuphead? Did you play it?
I did play it. I love Cuphead. The thing that's amazing about Cuphead to me is beyond anything is just the aesthetics, right? Like the look and the sound recreating those 1930s cartoons is just like it's one of the few times I think in any medium, digital or games or TV or movie or anything, where somebody was like, we're going to go for this specific, replicating this specific art style and look. And they just did it perfect, right? Mm-hmm. There's nothing you can look at in Cuphead and be like, man, I really don't know if that worked, right? Like, or they sort of missed the mark there. Like, it's immaculate. And I think that's, I said this on Beyond too, the episode of Beyond that's going live, our PlayStation podcast this week. But like, as a result, like Cuphead coming to PS4 years late is still exciting, right? Because it still holds up because of it doesn't look dated in the slightest. And we're going to be looking at Cuphead in 20 years and still going, wow, that game looks amazing, right? There's no aspect of that game that will age out, I think, in a very real way. So it's still exciting to see it coming to PS4, especially with this sort of surprise announcement, because Lord knows we've got enough of like, it's going to be out when it's ready. So, it's out now is cool.
Totally.
it's one of those games that I think when it came out, we were all just like, wow, like look at that art style. It's obviously like the biggest eye-catching thing about it. And now that I saw that stop motion thing, I'm like, wait, what if somebody made a game that was stop motion style? Like technically you can do that, right? Because Cuphead, they utilized hand-drawn like cells, and then you can control where those cells are moving. Technically, you can do the same thing with stop motion. Just take every single frame of where that figure would move, and then just control that. Be tight.
Yeah, the Clay Fighter games did that, right?
Oh, did they? I don't know. I never heard of that game.
Clay Fighters, yeah.
Clay Fighter was a side-scrolling like fighting game, 1v1 fighting game for I think it was Super Nintendo, and then they did 63 and a third for Clay Fighter 63 and a third for N64, and those were all like claymation guys that they did stop motion for. There's also a really famous game, point and click adventure game called The Neverhood that did claymation, and then I think that there was like a spiritual successor to The Neverhood called Armacrog, if I'm getting that right. That was unfortunately a little bit of a disappointment. People were not like super thrilled with it, but yeah, people have experimented with claymation stop motion art styles, and it's like it's super weird and cool, and I love, and like I love. I agree though. I love that sort of physical feel. Like it's what Nintendo has loved doing too, right? With like Yoshi's Crafted World and like that sort of line of games. It's really cool to see people branching out a little bit in terms of like making things physical.
Yeah, I would love to see that.
Well, and it's funny because you bring up Yoshi's Crafted World, which was a game that is this is a whole other conversation, but it's not very difficult, right? It's very accessible to all ages. I was not aware of that when I bought the game, and I found it slightly disappointing that it was kind of easy, but I'm happy that the kids can enjoy it, or if you're looking for an easy play. But with that said, I feel like Cuphead is also notorious for how difficult it is. I still haven't finished it because I am very stuck and I have no clue how to finish the level. But I think it would be an entirely different game if it was an easy game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would. I mean, especially it would be much shorter, right? Because since it's like boss rush style. Usually, we're looking at like one of the few kind of run and gun levels in it. It's all about just like live, die, repeat. You know, starring Tom Cruise. It's just it wants you to just go and go and go and figure out the right pattern. And yeah, it would not be the same game if it was super easy.
Well, I think the difficulty for some reason in my head really plays homage to the like classic animation style that they're going after, and just kind of that like darker, grittier, like it's cartoons, but also this guy's getting smashed in the face with a hammer and he died, and he has parents and they're sad, and you're just like, what is happening? Why? I thought this was a cartoon. But before we wrap up, Matt, have you played Cuphead?
No.
Well, now it's on 3 platforms. Is it on PC also?
No. Yeah, I also have
it's on 4 platforms.
You got no excuse.
I have no excuse. Like Josh, I have no excuse.
But also, if you don't feel like playing it because you're not interested, that's a completely valid reason not to play it. That's a good reason not to play things. Time is short, everyone.
I think what ended up happening was I had it when I had Game Pass, but I no longer have Game Pass, so I no longer have Cuphead. Is I think the order of operations.
That's how they get you.
Yeah.
That's how they get you. Well, I think that about wraps it up for us, and why I think I'm the host, and it does. The show's over. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Do not forget that News, Games, and More is a show that is every day, Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Pacific, live on IGN.com or IGN's YouTube channel, Twitch, anywhere that you like to watch IGN. Thank you all, you three. Thank you, you three, for joining me today. I don't know. I sound like a robot. Thanks for joining us. And panelists, friends, thank you also for joining me. Whatever. Bye. Yeah. Thanks for watching.